evening. Novice Lee, Frank, and I are having the most interesting discussion. In reflecting upon the Princeton Project, which touts democratic peace, hegemony, and imperialism, we've come to a comparison between the liberal world order and a Confucian one.
But my feelings are that the liberal and the Confucian world order are quite alike, despite obvious differences in philosophy, time, and place. Would you not agree?
An interesting thought, Shirley, but how are liberalism and Confucianism really alike?
Both offer a grand and unified version of all people and societies.
Yeah, but what are the many other worldviews that serve similarly? Whether it's those of many religious traditions or any other tradition for that matter. Surely a broader net can be cast with this comparison.
I feel the comparison holds these as well, but what of it?
Yeah, but we must understand the past as it was, in its time and place.
What exactly do you mean?
Well, let me give an example. Tianxia may have ruled as a concept for 2 millennia, but it was never realized. And in modern times, it hasn't even served as a concept. Why is it relevant for us today?
Actually, brother Monk, that's not quite accurate. Tianxia has always been an active concept in Confucian Asia. Even until the last World War, scholars and officials were debating it from Beijing to Hanoi, Singapore to Tokyo.
And what is it today?
Today, Tianxia is regaining attention as the Chinese Communist Party presents a related concept, a harmonious world for international affairs.
Some say Tianxia is a rhetorical ploy by the Chinese government to resist U.S. pressures to liberalize rather than an actual prescription for foreign policy.
That may be true, but who knows for sure. Even so, this taxing makes Tianxia all the more interesting.
You mean in terms of its role in supporting a Chinese nationalism?
Not exactly. A scholar from China, for example, suggests that the Communist Party is in a better position than any other time in Chinese history to realize Tianxia's goal of harmonious world.
Harmonious world, huh? How does Tianxia achieve this?
I think that in order to answer this question, we should review what Tianxia means.
Quite right, Sister Nun. According to the sources, Tianxia has 3 meanings. The universe, or the world, is the first meaning. The heart of all people, or the general will of the people, is the second meaning. And the third meaning is a world institution, universal system of the world, a utopia of a world as one family.
Altogether, these seem to convey a sense of worldness under Tianxia.
But historically, has not Tianxia granted the ruler of China control over all under the sun? Today, we live in a world of many sovereign states. What of Tianxia today?
You see, we should understand the historic interpretations of Tianxia by acknowledging their particular time and place. It can still apply even in the state of geopolitics we have today.
Yeah, sure, but we have an entirely different world order these days.
Right. If liberalism, and these days democracy and markets, account for the liberal world order, what is Tianxia's organizing ideology?
I believe that is Ren.
That is what the Confucian classics refer to as humaneness or sociality?
Yes, my knowledge of course is incomplete. I think the learned one knows more about this subject.
Thank you. Please allow me to share what I know. The Analects define Ren as the ability to love all men. Ren is composed of 2 radicals, or roots. One refers to person, the other, the number 2. Thus, Ren means literally a society of 2 or more persons.
Precisely. Thus, Ren cannot conceive of anything, whether person, institution, society, state, or the world outside of some form of community. One is necessarily and always interconnected with others. From Ren comes a sense of multiplicity.
Wasn't it the grand historian Sima Qian who introduced what he called mutual narratives? I remember that he used this to find truths in the many layers of an individual's character.
Yes, For instance, he would look at an assassin, in one sentence describe him as a romantic avenger, and in the next as a bandit. Sima Qian says that it's only through their juxtaposition that we can get at the truth of his character.
Yes, that's right. During the time of the Song Dynasty, there was a famous poet, Su She, who put it another way. One can relate it differently to the same object, even, he said, even if it is inanimate, depending on one's relation to it. Mornings I view Wu Mountain's breadth. Evenings I view its distant reach. Wu Mountain assumes many appearances, turning about to pose for its lover. Such is the extent of my knowledge of her.
Thank you both for your expositions. But then how is Ren expressed or exercised?
Through exemplary power, or Da. The Confucians believe that power comes from an ethical order, not just political institutions or military might.
Sorry to interrupt, but this concept of de, it seems to contrast quite sharply with the notion of state power in the liberal world order.
That's right. De requires no fixedities like borders or sovereignty or even a national body like a government to give it meaning. Rather, de emanates from a leader's proper cultivation. This depends on how the leader relates to family, community, state, and the universe. The reverse applies as well. That is, how the universe, the state, the community, and the family relate within and among each other.
Ah, I see. This is futurity.
How so?
Well, much like what we were discussing before, time and place. When I think of the Chen Dynasty, Tianxia was tied to the expansion of the Chinese Empire. Even during the Han Dynasty, it was tied to the nation and to the autonomy of the rule that governed it.
That is true.
Still, this should not direct the interpretation of Tianxia in the future. How are we to expect it to change?
Does the responsibility not rest in each and every individual and community that form the layers of the relationship under Tianxia?
Absolutely. The idea is that a society, its leader, is able to set such an admirable standard of virtue, then the rest of the country cannot help but follow. Each element depends on the others. Each also determines the others. All contributes to De. That is Tianxia.
How is Tianxia to govern then?
As a royal family, of course, Tianxia calls for cherishing men from afar.
Fine. But how does the economy come into play here? In today's day and age, the economy rules the world.
People must live well, that's all. This means having adequate food, clothing, and shelter. Moreover, the point is that people should be able to enjoy their lives and not just trudge from one shore to another.
What about military matters?
I think in order to answer this question, we can look to a good example from Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Many today mistake it for a Chinese version of Machiavelli's The Prince, or a manual for cutthroat strategies of war or business.
Exactly. They overlooked Sun Tzu's own purpose, philosophy, and worldview. Sun Tzu preferred diplomacy, negotiations, and even deception over war. His perfect scenario was to win war without spilling blood or wasting treasure.
Sure, but if war was inevitable, then he urged caution by minimizing its costs. Sun Tzu was not just being prudent or humane. He believed that opposites complemented each other, thereby producing the possibility of change at all times. Where there is hardness, for example, there is also softness, fixity, mobility, bravery, cowardliness, victory, defeat. Everything is subject to change. Nothing can be taken for granted.
That is fine, but what of relations with one another? What does Tianxia propose in this regard?
Transformation.
Whatever do you mean?
Foe to friend, stranger to family. It's the other side of cherishing men from afar.
Is this fundamentally different from the liberal world order?
Yes and no. The liberal world order demands assimilation, come up to par. Whereas Tianxia seeks transformation or be in community. But they overlap in one area, and that is in the direction of change.
I find then that like the liberal world order, transformation under Tianxia is a one-way only. It seeks always turn the barbarian towards the Confucian, the periphery towards the center. Unlike the liberal world order, Confucian transformation does not discipline or reform others if transformation fails to take place. They are seen simply as mild in barbarity.
I I'm getting a bit confused. Perhaps we could sum up the discussion so far. Let us draw a comparison between the liberal world order and Tianjia.
Given all this, could one conclude that Confucians and liberals both offer a world order of top-down, one-way power?
I think one would have good reason to. Sun Tzu himself may have preferred peace over war, diplomacy over defense, and strategy over brute force, but Chinese history is full of wars, conquests, killings, and enslavements. Sun Tzu himself lived in one of the bloodiest eras of Chinese history.
But we shouldn't rely on ancient times for evidence. Today we have exploitation, suppression, and even torture. Just look at the Chinese politics with our neighbors, the Tibetans, or the Uyghurs. For that matter, we get a sense of Confucian transformation in practical terms.
And we hear how the family serves as a poor model for world politics. We all know that families are capable of all kinds of abuses and humiliations, exploitations, and vice. Even where abuses may not occur, patriarchy still defines the Confucian family. So where is Ren in this case?
On China's current controversies with Tibetans and Uyghurs are as much a product of liberalism as Confucianism. After all, why are the Tibetans agitating for sovereignty and Uyghurs for civil rights?
No doubt, Frank. That is why today, many in Asia seek to decolonize, de-imperialize, and demarketize the region. It's not that they're against sovereignty or civil rights. Rather, they want to define these concepts on their own terms and their own circumstances, rather than the West's.
We should consider the question of what is Asia anyway. In fact, the continent of Asia has always been dynamic, fluid, and multiple. The Silk Road, after all, mixed peoples, languages, cultures, and religions for 15 centuries.
All this is very nice. But what about world order? It seems we have decided that the liberal world order and Tianjia may each have worthy elements. Both remain hegemonic and imperialistic. Consequently, neither offers a sustainable order for the world.
Is a world order necessary?
We can't escape having one since globalization implicates us all, for better or for worse. And given the amount of suffering that passes in the daily lives of far too many in the world today, is it not better to have a world order by intentional design than by proxy?
What to do in that one? How should we proceed?
What if, as the Silk Road reminds us, we turn to our long, venerable traditions for inspiration and insight?
Excellent idea, learned one. After all, our monastery stands in testament to one who has given us a legacy of worlds and how to find order within them.
Still, I don't think we should revert to tradition exclusively for inspiration. But to whom are you referring to?
But the 7th century monk Wanzang, of course.
You mean the monk who was immortalized in the Chinese classic Journey to the West?
Yes. In those days, the West meant India. Today, our prior brother monk is remembered throughout the Buddhist world.
How interesting. Maybe it would be beneficial for us to acknowledge that all we have gained in the past by engaging in global trade and commercial relations. Certainly, it has been a part of the road that has led to where we are now. As was taught to us by Wang Xing, we should hold on to what is useful from the interpretation of Tianjia of the past and adapt it to meet the new needs and priorities of today.
This is indeed true. As we continue to take part in globalization, we will in many ways be following the same road that our prior brother monk did. Let us continue our discussion in the library room where we can do further research.
The writers of the new script also come to the center and take a bow. So Brandon and Roxanne and Christine were the writers, and Kathleen was the director.
Were you trying, it sounds like some of it is more contemporary as far as like when you're rewriting it, you're thinking of it less as the dialogue, but like more of like what would be contemporary, like even the images too were like a good representation of that. So I was wondering if that, for you as actors and also as writers, if that seemed to be more relevant to you? Like, did you see that as touching base with, instead of reading it as a more of a traditional format for the play?
I mean, I'll answer some to that. I mean, I think us as writers did find it to be relevant in the sense that the original text already built on that traditional kind of narrative very well. And so I think in order to even suggest other forms of meaning, it would be of use to make it contemporary, especially given we're in this class and we're engaging in these very real conversations. And certainly there is this transformation in the way in which Confucian and liberal ideas have kind of evolved over time. So it is, very relevant in that sense.